Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Icon. Thank you so much for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. Today, we are going to be breaking down this very last match between Chicago and London that ended up sealing the deal and giving Chicago their second championship of this CDL season. Before we get into the actual analysis, I do want to break down. I want to pause it. I want to explain what Chicago ended up doing well to give them the victory in this matchup. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure we're giving props where props are due, because when you're talking about this matchup in particular, ARCITYS was unbelievable. So this map, ARCITYS and SCUMP absolutely went off. For the entire series, ARCITYS and Formal went off. When you're looking at ARCITYS, in his overall KD for this match was a 1.5, his hardpoint was a 1.65, and his dom was a 1.8. I mean, the man was just, I don't want to say he was the best one for the weekend, but he did it map in, map out, and he was a big reason. It seemed like every time you needed a big rotation or a big kill, ARCITYS, Formal, and on this map, SCUMP, were the three that really made things happen. One thing I'll say about Pristini is that Pristini ended the day for this matchup having like a 0.84, which you might say, well, that's not super impressive, but for a person like Pristini, who averages so many interactions, it is impressive. So a 0.84 for Pristini is a lot different than like a 0.84 for Envoy, right? They're expected to do different things, whereas Pristini's kind of like the entry man, right? Whereas Envoy's the person that comes in behind and slays and cleans everything up. One thing I'll say about Envoy is that he was 71 and 71 in this matchup. So he had a 1.0 KD, which is a little bit lower than what you'd expect from him, just because we kind of know him as such a master performer this year in the CDL. So maybe a little bit underwhelming for him, but ARCITYS stepped up. And that's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, is that it really comes down to like championship DNA, right? There are so many teams, like for example, London's playing really well, but I think it would be safe to say, not that they haven't been there, but they haven't been there on the same level that the Formals have throughout the course of their year, or the course of their career. The Scumps have throughout the course of their career. And I know Envoy and ARCITYS and Pristini are somewhat new, right, in terms of the longevity of competitive Call of Duty, but they've shown that they can perform in those situations, especially last year on EU with ARCITYS and Pristini. So with all of that said, I was really impressed with what Formal did, with what ARCITYS did, even SCUMP still performing the level that he's performing at. So right now, as we hop into the analysis, Chicago is up 2-1. This is the Hackney Yard hardpoint. So I wanted to go ahead and I want to make sure I was breaking it down. So right now we're on P3. We're about to rotate to P4. And one thing that you might have noticed is that I was a little bit surprised by how much time Chicago was able to get on P1. P2 got a little bit iffy, and even on P3, they were able to extend that lead a little bit. And as I'm watching this now in the bottom left-hand corner, if you're looking there, they don't even really have spawns for P4 or for P5. And I know P4 is kind of a hill that's pretty contested on this map, but right now on P5, you want to be having those back left spawns, because P5's what's called, right, you could call it a money hill on this map. So they're not even really in position for that. I know ARCITYS was just trying to get through and he got cut down, but let me go ahead and let me pause this so you guys can see exactly what's happening. Bottom left-hand side of your screen, there is a mini map there. I want to go ahead and I want to draw on that. So right now we are inside of P4. P5 is going to be back here in this area. And the biggest way right now, Chicago spawning on this side of the map, and that's not where you want to be on P5. You want to be over by bottom yellow, which is right here on this part of the map. So the biggest way that you do that is you kind of flank through P1 through warehouse, and if you can get to back yellow on this side of the map, now all of a sudden as you start to filter into P5, that's going to take London and that's going to start spawning them over by P4. And if they start spawning by P4, now there's just two choke points they can go through, right? They can go by Blue Van or they can go top heaven. So even though we're about to rotate, there's 20 seconds left in P4, we're about to rotate from P4 into P5, which is where teams get a lot of points. That's really where you make a difference. Right now, it's not set up that way. So as Chicago's coming up off of spawn right now, you can see that they're all filtering through P1. And that's where you want to be. And this is a mistake from London. If you're London, you have to be watching that bottom choke point. So down here on the bottom of the map, right now, there are 4 Chicago players down there. If you let them take over this part of the map, they're going to get this spawn, and you're going to start spawning out over here by P4. So you would like to have somebody, if I'm drawing on the actual screen, you would like to have somebody up here, right? In top heaven, shooting down. I know Zero's up here, but all it takes is a smoke thrown in this corner, and now everybody can flood through, and they can cut off mid-map. They can cut off the back entrance to P5. So there's a lot going on here, and it just seems like there's a ton of attention being paid to P4 right now, and not a lot of attention being paid to this cut as you're trying to get through to P5. Because look right now, as of right now, that was super easy to overtake. Even though Zero got a kill on Pristini, he was traded out by SCUMP. Everybody else from Chicago went through, and now they're just watching these 2 choke points. This is exactly what we talked about, right? As soon as you're Chicago and you take over this spawn, that's going to take London, spawn them out here, and now you have to jump over graffiti wall if you want to try to counter and go back this way, or it's either blue van or go heaven, and those are your only options. So that's why this is such a money hill, because if you get trapped over by P4, if that's your spawn, there's only a couple quick ways that you can go ahead and try to get pressure onto P5, and that's just not that easy to do. So if this was to end, P1 or the first set of rotations were to end right now, being in the 120 mark is already a success for the first set of rotations, right? If you can get in that 120, 130, 135 range, then things are looking really good for you in terms of winning the map overall. Not to say that the other team can't come back, but if you're going to get all of those points, and this is going to be like a 156 to 100 setup here after the end of first set of rotations, having almost 160 in terms of your score after the first set of rotations that's just killing it, right? So as we go ahead and move on, and this is going to the second set of rotations, the one thing that I'll say is that if you are London, it's not all bad, right? As long as you keep spawns for P2 on Hackney Yard, as a lot of people have been talking about recently, is the most dominant hard point in the entire game. It's the hardest one to break. It's held at the highest rate for teams that have that spawn. So as long as you don't give up a ton of time inside of P1 and you're able to get basically 50 or 60 seconds on P2, then you could essentially come back, right? They're only down right now by about 50 points. So as long as they could contest in P1, but this is the issue. Look what's happening right now. Minimap, bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Look at what's happening up top. Scump and Formal are spawning over here by green. You can see that both of their green arrows are pointed this way. And look at where all of the attention for London is set. Everybody's attention is down here at the bottom of the map. They're all trying to get a ton of time inside of P1, which I get it, right? You're behind the ball here. You do have to try to catch up, but you can't send every single person through. You have to have somebody watching that cross. Now, luckily, they were able to get that spawn, which is a little bit of an iffy spawn, and this is where Scump absolutely goes in. You can see him on the minimap. Let me pause it. They just showed him up here on the screen, but Scump is right here, and he is behind enemy lines, right? So if you're London, you're thinking, well, we have somebody spawning in this back corner. We're up here pushed by police car. We're pushing into P1. We just got a kill, right? Who is that? Shawnee just got a kill on Formal up here at the top of the map. So you're figuring everything's fine. But it's not. Scump was able to sneak through, and that's what we just talked about like 15 seconds ago. Scump was able to sneak through. Now he is in the hole, and he goes on a little bit of a tear here. So he gets that kill over Wuskin. They know he's here. He gets another kill on Dylan, and this is that championship pedigree, right? He gets another one on Scraps. Another one comes through. He gets a kill on Wuskin before he finally goes down, and by that time, the rest of his teammates are there. And now it's danger time, because if you're looking, this is a split spawn, right? So let me pause this just for a second. This is contested time inside the current hill, and you don't see this very often. It's not very often where one team, so if you're thinking about other maps like on Gunrunner, P2 on Gunrunner, P5 on Gunrunner, maps like that, if it becomes contested, then it becomes a top part of the map, a bottom part of the map. So one team is spawning up top, one team spawning down beneath, and it's kind of contested inside the hardpoint. And that's what you're seeing right now. So since that was contested, London is spawning up top and Chicago is spawning down underneath, and all of this contested area right here in the middle is happening as they're trying to work their way into the current hard point. So this is a little bit of a different look, because when it comes to this map and mode, you don't see this very often, especially for P2. As we said about a minute ago, this is like the easiest to hold, right? The most dominant hardpoint on the entire game is P2. Now, luckily, if you're a London fan, they were able to get a team kill right there. So they're going to be able to get the last 20 seconds here, or at least, I don't remember what happens these last 20 seconds. They're in position to get the last 20 seconds, and Dylan ends up winning that. And then he goes down. So this is big right here. I didn't remember what happened at the last 10 seconds there, but that's a big chunk of time if you're Chicago, because if you think about it, if those 11 or 12 seconds go the way of London, now all of a sudden it's 190 to 160, right? We're within 30 points. So right now, if you're looking at the minimap in the bottom left-hand corner, London is in position to have spawns for P3, 4, and 5. Will they be able to hold them? Who knows? But since they were able to sneak through, those last 11, 12 seconds end up going to Chicago, and now it's going to be a 200 to 150 game. So instead of there being a 30-point difference, there's a 50-point difference, and that's really big. So even though it's 10 points, that's a 20-point swing in terms of 10 points going to one team and not the other team. So I feel like stuff like that's not really stressed enough. So we'll see what happens here as we rotate to P3 to P4. But the one thing you want to pay attention to is that this is where Chicago really starts to pour it on in terms of the slaying department. Again, for this matchup, a lot from Chicago. So a lot of players from Chicago were in that 1.5, that 1.3 range in terms of total KD. And these are really the reasons why ARCITYS right there was able to sneak back through. And as soon as you can see bottom left-hand corner of your screen, as soon as ARCITYS got that kill from top yellow, I know that he has pushed up since then to go to top L, but as soon as he got that kill in top yellow, the rest of his teammates, Formal, Envoy, are now spawning in yellow, so it makes it easy to access P3 and eventually to P5. So even if Chicago doesn't get any more points inside of P3 or P4, they could essentially win. We saw what they did on the first set of rotations when they held positioning for P5. So, of course, you don't want to give up all that, but they were in position. Since then, Chicago has went down, but meanwhile, those last 15 seconds, the whole time we've been talking about ARCITYS and getting those spawns and getting those kills, they've been picking up that time inside of P3. So they picked up a big 15 seconds there. They're in it again. Remember, they were at 200 when they left P2. So they didn't have spawns initially, and they've already gotten about 25 points inside of P3. And that's just really big scrap time. And remember, we were talking about this is where Chicago starts to pour it on. Wait till you see the kill death in the left-hand side of your screen. ARCITYS got one. SCUMP with the two-piece. Formal with the kill. ARCITYS with another. SCUMP with a third, right? This is where it's already back to 240. They're within 10 points of winning. Envoy with the two-piece. ARCITYS with the two-piece. So you can talk about rotations and everything all you want, but when it came down to it, those last few hills, Chicago just poured it on, and it went down to the slaying department, and that was really what ended up being the difference maker for Chicago winning the championship. And look up here in the top right-hand corner. Man, I absolutely love this. SCUMP, you can see the emotion on his face. You might be thinking, why is SCUMP still competing? He could be streaming. He could be one of the top streamers in the game. That's why, because you just can't replicate that emotion. I just kind of realized that my face cam is over top of his, but you can see his mouth open right there. You can see him screaming. So with that, let's go ahead. I do want you guys to see the overall score just so you can see the score line, what ARCITYS ended up with, what SCUMP ended up with. I think it's right around here. ARCITYS was like 33 and something along those lines. Right here, here we go. So ARCITYS was 30-14. SCUMP was 31-16. Envoy was 28-19. Formal was 25-19. I mean, you can see where the difference was made, right? And even Pristini down here at the bottom, Pristini was 21-22, but this is what Pristini does. Look at how many assists he had. He had 12 assists, more than anybody else on his team. Look at his time inside the hill. He had 1:30 inside the hill. So when you're thinking about, well, Pristini's scoreline's a little bit lower, he's that entry man. That's why he has so many assists. That's why he has so much time inside the hard point. He does all those dirty things that some of the players they had in the past might not be willing to do. So with that, guys, I hope that I was able to give you guys a little bit of a better understanding in terms of what was going on in this matchup, why Chicago is able to win. If you enjoy this sort of content, I put out brand new videos like this every single day, so make sure you put a comment down below. Make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss any of my future content. Anything you guys want to say, comments on the tournament as a whole, Chicago's last day, make sure you put those down below also. I really enjoy the interactions and hearing what you guys have to say. Make sure you guys leave a like before you head on your way. It really helps out the channel. And thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed my coverage of CDL Seattle. I will catch you in tomorrow's video for more team scrims.